Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you Putt-Putt Saves the Zoo for the Nintendo Switch. I used to love the Humongous Entertainment games growing up, and I'm glad to report that this is more or less a very, very faithful port of that original experience. I say very, very faithful with a slight hesitation in my voice because they really did not modernize this experience in the slightest. It still has the same aspect ratio. The voice acting and sound effects haven't really been touched up at all, so it still has kind of a muffled feel to it, like the original game did, so it doesn't feel like a true HD experience. Now, to my knowledge, this is actually based on the iOS port that came several years earlier, so maybe it's slightly better than what I remember on the PC, although I still don't feel like that's saying much. Then again, if you're a purist like me, you're probably going to love just being able to relive your childhood memories and be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the same. Of course, if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, oh, this is mind-numbingly simple. So this review is primarily aimed at people who have kids of their own, or maybe if you have nieces or nephews who want a nice, family-friendly video game that's easy to pick up, then that's what this review is aimed for. If you're watching this and are over the age of like 7, you're probably going to want to do a hard pass on this. So the premise is that this is a point-and-click adventure game where you move around a mouse cursor and you, well, click on things. Sometimes you'll find items that you'll use to help you solve a puzzle, and your objective is to search around an unopened zoo to try to find the missing little animals. Now you have a checklist that tells you what all the animals are, although you probably won't really need it because the zoo's not very big. One thing I do like about the zoo is that it feels very interconnected. Sometimes you can see various other parts of the zoo when you're at a high enough elevation, and sometimes at the end of the game the camera will zoom out, and it really does feel like the developers thought of where everything was and created a cohesive world, even if it doesn't seem particularly believable as a real zoo. But one thing that it does do really nicely is that when you're at an animal exhibit, there will be a speaker that gives you various facts about the animals. Like, for example, did you know that newborn giraffes can be as tall as 6 feet? Like, that's slightly taller than the average American male grows up to be. And you can click on these recordings over and over again to view more facts. Another little interesting bit of immersion that I'm surprised the other Humongous Entertainment games don't do very much is that sometimes the animals will talk on their own before you even click on them. They'll often say, oh no, where are my children? And the animals that you're trying to rescue will often cry out and help or say like, oh no, I miss my parents. So as opposed to the other NPCs in most video games where they're just stock silent and just stand there until you happen to initiate the conversation, the characters take matters into their own hands. Now again, this game is ridiculously simple, and unlike the later Humongous Entertainment games, the narrative doesn't change between playthroughs, so you're going to be going through the same scenarios. Now, there is a benefit to this, and that's that it allows you to try to speedrun. So if you're someone like me who's played this game over and over again, it can be fun to try to figure out the optimal route through the zoo. Also, another thing of note is that there's quite a lot of optional content for kids to sink their teeth into. There's a few areas that you don't really need to explore to fully complete the game. There's a few mini games that you can play, and there's even an area in the grasslands where you can paint Putt-Putt a different color. I chose to paint him blue because that's my favorite color. So I really like that option of customization in a game that otherwise doesn't have a whole lot of modern features. Now again, you're probably not going to want to play this if you're, well, in the double digits of age, because this is the lowest tier of difficulty, as the Humongous games tend to ramp up depending on the protagonist, with Putt-Putt being the easiest, then followed by Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam, and Spy Fox. So you might get some mileage out of the later games, but this one is definitely not going to challenge you very much at all. But if you have a young kid who has basic reasoning skills or who just wants to click on everything and see what happens, then you should be fine. One slight issue that they might have is that in the original release, the mouse cursor would change shape depending on what you were clicking on. It would fill in with white if you could click on an object and either make a silly little animation appear or if you could actually interact with something, and then it would change to an arrow if you can move to a new area. Whereas in this Switch version, for some odd reason, the mouse cursor is always the same shape no matter what, so it might not always be obvious what's clickable and what isn't. It's a minor nitpick because this game is so easy, but I still feel like it's really weird that they couldn't have sorted that out during the porting. Maybe it's because it's the iOS version and that had touchscreen support, which technically the Switch version does too, so you can do that if you're in handheld play. So I recommend it for kids. Don't recommend it for anyone else unless you're really nostalgic like I am. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you have any comments or questions, or if I left out anything. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and did you know that... No, never mind. I'll leave it to the game to tell you all those fun facts. Bye!